My name is Shaunak Rishidas. I'm director of the Centre for Hindu Studies in Oxford, and this is my conversational colleague for the afternoon.
Hello, my name is Junaid Wahidna. Quick background, born in Baroda, but we're from Bombay. Grew up in Dubai, studied at Columbia, I did engineering, set up fintech while in New York, focused on sharia-compliant investing, and got quite lucky with that. So today, 10 countries, over $1 billion, and long way to go. So I look forward to this conversation on aligning ethics in investments.
There you go. Thank you. I'd like to just complain at the beginning to the organizers for putting me in conversation with someone who looks like a Bollywood star. Just
You know, being in tech, I'm not allowed to dress formally. It's a rule we have. So
yeah, I expected a T-shirt, but there you go. So first, we'll talk a little bit about faith-compliant investing, as it has been called. And maybe I'll just introduce that concept first. The idea of faith-compliant investing, it really started during the apartheid era in the 1980s, when religious organizations from different faiths started to ask their asset managers not to invest in South Africa because of apartheid. It was the first time religious organizations realized that their investment strategy could be aligned to their principles, their ways of thinking. So this has developed since that time, and a number of religious organizations have got together and thought, how could we do this more effectively? Excuse me. There is an organization called Faith Invest that is helping the Vatican develop a statement on Catholic investment. We're talking with Buddhists about Buddhist investment, Taoists in China. We're talking with the Grand Mufti of Egypt about how they invest their money. So this is a conversation that has not only started but has traction. And just to say why this is relevant, about 15% of the markets are directly owned by faiths around the world. 8% of the landmass, the habitable landmass on the planet, is owned by different faiths. 54% of the schools are owned by different faiths. 60-something percent, 64, 65% of the media organizations on the planet are owned by different faiths. So faiths do have real traction. They have real potency. If they were to work together, God, imagine that. If faiths were actually to invest together and to say, we will disinvest in fossil fuels, asset managers would immediately start to look for alternatives because they have no choice. Now, the difficulty that the UN has had up to this point is that they haven't been able to motivate, with all the COP meetings, motivate politicians to change their mind about climate change, for instance. And they turned to religion for the first time in their history for help because the politicians were under the heel, so to speak, of asset managers. The religions aren't, never have been. Their outlook is they're investing not on the short term, not on medium term, but on the ultimate long term for eternity. So they think in very long terms. So that's the basis of it. Dharma investments, which is where the Oxford Centre for Hindu Studies comes in, an academic institution asked by the Dow Jones to come up with the thinking behind dharmic investments for Hindus, Buddhists, Jains and Sikhs. We spent 2 years researching this. We had 25 scholars from the world, around the world, sign off on a document. That's a very difficult thing to do. We also got a lot of the Hindu leaders and Jain leaders to sign off on the document. So we ended up with the intellectual basis for dharmic investing. And now we're looking for a vehicle by which we can start to do this. Actively, conversations are going on. That's Dharma investing. If we look at those sectors, and we include the yoga communities around the world and vegans, etc. These are all people who will invest dharmically. This isn't just an Indian thing. This is absolutely a global thing. Yoga, it's billions upon billions is made every year in yoga. In Mumbai, in my last visit, a lady walked past me with Sweaty Betty yoga stuff and a thing under her, an Indian lady. She can go to the Kari Bhavan and buy all this stuff for 700 rupees. But no, she goes to New York to buy it. So this is huge business. And it's huge business in India and outside of India. So this is real money. With that, I'd like to talk to, this is the intellectual, the thinking behind it, but the person who's making it happen on the Islamic finance side, Junaid.
And I want to add, with the Dharma index, so I just found out about this a few days ago when I was introduced to Shaunika. And looking through it, I said, this seems completely Islamic. So not only the yoga community, you should also have the Muslim community. It's just our lack of awareness and our lack of education, because unfortunately, we don't seem to be collaborating enough. So when we set up, we were helped by a few different key people. Our first investors were Christian, our first employees were all Hindu in our Mumbai office, and our first lawyers and the entire team making it happen was Jewish, right? So everyone came in saying, wow, this is ethical. So I don't think there's any contention when it comes to finance between faiths, and that's quite a statement. So if you look at Islamic finance, the entire goal is to minimize inequality creation and have an ethical ecosystem of finance. Now, Abrahamic faiths have a very specific rule when it comes to finance, which is probably the most talked about, and that's a prohibition to interest and usury. Now, you may think, okay, that doesn't relate at all, but I would argue it absolutely does. There are countless nonprofits today who have determined that interest-based money lending, because loans are risk-based, right? The richer you are, the lower the interest rate, the poorer you are, the higher the interest rate, credit cards and so on and so forth. It creates inequality. It's your cost of capital, so to speak, right? We need to minimize inequality. We need to have an equitable way to run financial services. And we see this in India as well, right? Rich getting richer, poor getting poorer. It's a theme. So I do feel very confident in being able to bridge this gap. Now, when it comes to application, unfortunately, how would I put this diplomatically? The religious communities seem to be more emotional from what we've seen than objective. So we're very delicately balancing how we present certain things, but I honestly believe from the bottom of my heart that we could make our entire product Dharma-compliant. And there will be absolutely no difference. It would better our screens. So just now we're listing ETFs on the London Stock Exchange, and we've just filed it, and we've added Christian screens to the Sharia screens. And everyone said, why? We have no Christian clients, but it actually makes it better. They've thought about a lot of humanitarian elements that we hadn't thought about. Now when you look at the Dharma index, it goes one step further. And I'm genuinely looking to see how we can add those screens, because it helps everyone. And there's nothing contentious, I'm looking, between these faiths when it comes to finance.
That was diplomatic, was it?
Trying to be.
No, so that's perfect, because when you look at faith-consistent investing, we know about ethical investing, we've heard it, and it leads to impact investing, which is maybe a more positive spin on that. But faith-consistent investing is adding something else. It's adding people's character, their principles, their values, what they consider most precious, and you're telling them you can invest in that, and you can invest in that with others. And so what Junaid is saying, if I'm hearing correctly, is there are fewer barriers than we think in this, and this is how this faith-consistent investment idea started. Before the 1980s and apartheid, it may be surprising to know that the UN Human Rights Declaration, that we all think is the greatest thing since sliced bread, was started by religious people after World War II who insisted that the UN include this. The UN didn't want to include it. It came from religious people saying, based on our values, we have to make this statement. that everyone is equal. It's not the usual thing that religions come out, everyone's an equal, but Catholics are more equal than Hindus and vice versa. But again, when it comes to finance, I lived for many years in Belfast in Northern Ireland. There's certain streets you go into and it's just a violent place. Certain streets you go into and it's not. And what was the difference? The difference was these people were making money. And because they were in business, then Catholic Protestant didn't mean as much as the bottom line. Now, when you go to an asset manager in the Church of England and an asset manager in some Jewish institution, they're Jewish and Anglican, but they're dealing with asset management. They're not the emotional ones. They're actually quite objective. So there are people that we can talk to about how to influence the bottom line that you're getting absolutely the same return. All the surveys, all the research says that you can absolutely get the same returns. That's not an issue at all. But do you have values? Do you need to see them here? Or are we kind of schizophrenic? That we say we believe in ahimsa or we believe in whatever, charity generally, but when it comes to an asset manager, we just say, make money. And there's nothing, we don't include our principles in that. But we can, and if we can, we motivate people more fundamentally, I would suggest, because most people are motivated by the most passionate thing in their lives that maybe in a secular world we don't bring to work, but it is our most passionate motivation. And could that motivation make money in a good way with a good benefit for the common good? And that's the sales pitch. But I think it's interesting. We think about it in Oxford. We've outlined it intellectually. But Junaid, it's great to see a young person, because I'm past that young age now. It's good to see a young person doing something about it.
So, there was actually something we tried that no one else had tried. So you mentioned, these institutions are quite objective. What we realized is rich people and institutions are only bottom line driven and they don't actually care about the ethics that much. So all of our clients are pure retail. We have 500,000 clients, US, UK, Malaysia, and quite global now. And none of them would even be classified as high net worths. Every single one of them is super retail, because the more retail, the more they seem to care about ethics. It's unbelievable. So all these institutions go and try to raise money from, the richer business people and the industries, but unfortunately they don't seem to, at least based on our data, this is completely opinionated, based on our data, they don't seem to care as much as the normal person. The normal person says, I want to be a good person, I'll keep my retirement pension fund with an ethical company. Now here's the kicker. So we listed our first exchange-traded fund on the NASDAQ a couple of years ago now, and we tracked the US equities index. Consistently, for I think over 5 years now, we've beat the index. Consistently. Which is insane. We're not active managers, we're passive. We're not trying to beat, the rest of the market. It just ended up happening by being selective with ethics. So I think there's a beautiful reward in all of this, and we should not be afraid of standing by our ethics when it comes to money.
Oh, very good. I also think we shouldn't be afraid of high net worth individuals. Because with the work that we've done, we've been in contact with quite a number of Indian high net worth individuals. It's interesting, we found a lot of them going to Harvard and Wharton and Yale to do courses in philanthropy. So how do they set up family foundations and what is philanthropy? It's all taught from a Western perspective, from an Abrahamic perspective, nothing of Indian culture involved. So I think there is a growing awareness as these people, as these families mature and become more global, they're more aware of the need. And I think that's another segment that we could be aware of. Because you talk about the Catholic community, in Europe, for instance, and this is another statistic, 15% of the market is owned by religious organizations. Up to 35% could be controlled by family-based businesses that are religious by nature. So if religions came out with a statement saying, this is our advice for investment, and these people took it seriously, you have a huge influence on the market. But a lot of these sectors are high net worth people. So I think there's real potency there that we have to tap into.
Absolutely. I can see that. I think that there's different ways to solve the problem, but we do have to work together. That seems to be, the cusp of now India, from what we've seen, the faith-based investing market, it's at a very nascent stage. Basically doesn't exist. Everyone's still calling it ethical. Now the issue with ethical, even, and that's not widespread, is what does that mean? Ethics are different to everyone, and it's very subjective. Now for us, the issue was, again, we listed another ETF, and it was ESG compliant. And then we realized that the index provider, they kept changing the definition. We're like, what is this? And eventually our board said, this is a complete waste of everyone's time, because what does ESG mean? It's so subjective. Everyone has a different ranking mechanism. They keep changing what they think it means. So we do need relatively clear lines. And I think faith gives us those clear lines. So for us, as Islamic investors, we can never invest in tobacco companies, pornography companies, weapons companies, nothing that seems to be harming society, but you can go a lot further. Like I know with the Dharma index, you have gone a lot further. So we absolutely need to work together to build that out. And I think India is the perfect time for this, because there's mass retail adoption now in financial services. There never was. Everyone has a little investment app. It's a game changer, and I think the time is perfect to actually mobilize that money for the greater good of humanity. And I don't think any faith should have an issue with that.
Yeah, and in the last session, we heard that a lot of people are purpose-driven in India, and there is this, people are aware of their values and their principles, but not when it comes to the market. The markets in India, I'm going to be undiplomatic now, are like the Wild West. It's like America in the 70s. It's the regulation is there, but no one seems to notice. But I think it's a part of development, so a necessary part of development. But I think this is exactly the time to connect this thirst for, gosh, we can make money with purpose, because financial, economic decisions have real life consequences. And we have to make that connection.
Agreed. So we've just been signaled that we should be opening it up to Q&A at this point in time. So
if anyone had a question and answer, a comment, or a...
Hello. Oh, sorry. So really interesting chat. So how do you envisage, you've got the dharmic versus sharia. How do you envisage doing it together, collaboratively?
So
you've told me the differences. India is...
it's just it's not...
Versus.
Yeah, it's not versus.
Like you should...
I'm sorry,
avoid
it's in your title.
Did they write that?
Yeah.
The rascals.
And that's the reason I stayed to listen to this conversation.
That's my second complaint.
Where the problem comes?
My second complaint to the organizers. So we've come here as disruptors to say that that's a load of rubbish. So it's interesting. Indian thinking has never been either or. It's always both and.
Yeah.
So it's not dharmic or sharia. It's both and. And any asset manager would have to think like that. Why would you take one sector out where you could be making money?
Well, this is what I'm saying. It should be together, collaboratively. But what I got from your conversation is a little bit that Sharia's gone a long way and India hasn't. And you haven't got a set of similar rules to follow, which you should have. I don't know.
We do. So every dharmic rule that exists that I saw would be sharia compliant. Not a single one we'd say, oh, we can't do that, right?
So rather than having Sharia and Dharmic, why don't you have a different name, which is together, and work together?
That's absolutely the game plan.
I think the name is probably causing the differences.
No, it is interesting though. If you've had this experience with the Catholics, that you approach someone and you say, it's all one, everyone gets that, but when push comes to shove, you're a Patel. Or you're a Shah, and I'm not going to marry my daughter to you, or whatever the issues are. But the thing is, if you get people who are like-minded together, who have some kind of common bond together, and give them strength in finance, interestingly, it becomes easier for them to negotiate a relationship with others. So Dharma has certain values and principles. The Islamic world has certain values and principles. The fact that they're compliant in this space it's a very important example for us to show that we can work together somewhere even if it's just in the markets. But that could have a knock-on effect. But there are differences, and the differences have to be respected as well. But they can only be respected once you know who you are. And to have a relationship with someone and to know someone and to work with them, that bond creates the social cohesion that we need in India and everywhere else.
But it's absolutely possible. So there's a mutual fund in India, for example. Actually, there's a few. So one of them is like a Tata Ethical Fund. So if you look at the investors, you have the Muslim community, and you have the Jain community, and you have a bit of the Hindu community. All ethical investors, right? So they're all taking what fits kind of their ethics. So absolutely possible. It's already been done. It also comes down to a commercial exercise. At the end of the day, we're for-profit businesses. So what do people want? I know, again, for whatever reason, I'm not hypothesizing why, if I go to a Muslim client and I say, this is an Islamic brand and the email coming to you looks Islamic, sounds Islamic, it's much, much easier to get them on rather than going to them and saying it's ethical. It is what it is, right? So we have to look at the cost of acquisition, and over here it's much cheaper. It makes a lot more economic sense. So maybe we can have the identical platform but different brands, which is something we're absolutely looking at doing.
Yeah, so not either or, so the same except different. Has anyone else got a question? It's difficult for me to see here.
Yep, there. Light in your eye.
Yep. I'm enlightened here. I can't see anything.
Thanks. Well, I don't have a question. I have a compliment. I like the way you started and then I've been a consultant for business, supporting hospitality. And when you look at the widely level of hospitality, I think 60% businesses are owned by a Muslim. And when it's come to commercial transaction and any business, I think all these laws and religious things stay on side. And then I'm working with 3 clients. They're all Muslim. They all have a restaurant and a bar where we serve alcohol. So I think religious, is there. If you ask me, I'm a Hindu, but still I work with lots of clients with Muslim and Jews and everyone. So I think I like the way you started with go dharmic thing. That religious is there, but when it comes to business, if you say in Gujarati, business is business. Rest all is something else. Thank you.
The Gujaratis had to get the word in there. Yes, I do agree with that business is business, but I also think it's important that people are able to bring their passion, their faith, their conviction to the table in every circumstance, and it's welcome, it's nurtured, and it's respected. And that just makes for better business, better relationships, and the bottom line increases. The only little thing I'd like to say is a critique, I'm critiquing all day here, of business schools that constantly teach maximization of profit. Maximization is an extreme. We don't want to be extremists. It's absolutely unsustainable. And I do think we have to begin to think in a more long-term way. And talking about something like faith in finance means that you're bringing in traditions that have been on the planet longer than any other tradition, any other organization. The Catholic Church that we mentioned is the biggest organization on the planet. It's the oldest organization on the planet. Hinduism is the oldest religion on the planet. It has no organization, interestingly. But these traditions have outlived everything: epidemics, tsunamis, plagues, conquests, delightful things and terrible things. And they can help us negotiate any circumstance. So to bring them into any sphere is just intelligent. And the fact that someone like Junaid is doing that effectively and progressively, I think we have to take seriously. And with that, I think we're out of time. Yes. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.